Next, let's go ahead and call our meeting to order. And first up on our agenda is electing a committee chair. So we can nominate people to be chairs.
You do such a good job, Sean. Right, Jay?
Is that a nomination?
That's a nomination and a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything. All right. Next up is our approval of our minutes from the last meeting.
I move to approve our November 23rd minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we quickly run through the 300s just to get Jane caught up a little bit, because I think this is your first P&G meeting. So we went through them all once and came back with a handful of real minor changes actually with them, and they're reflected in this. And so this is kind of just our second run through of P&G, but then the 300s will be on next Tuesday's agenda for the board to approve. So they're highlighted in there. I think it was mostly titles and then a couple of other little things in there. So I'll throw it out to anybody if there was any other changes that they wanted to see on those.
There's a couple small edits I made that you might have noticed in the highlights around some of the points we talked around last time. One was in the 350? I'm getting my number confused. I clicked on it and then I lost it here. Or 305. 305 Administrator Code of Ethics, the highlighted portion. The statement begins with shall not discriminate, and then we added in and leads with an anti-racist lens. And then, Kim, what was the other one we edited to include the another one here too?
Was it 305? Oh, wait.
Yeah, 303 too. There were a couple
Yep.
on like the employment, who the board employs.
305 and 306.
Oh, yeah. And
Yep.
then we checked on that and found that it should read that way. I know there was some conversation about if it should really state the board employs the superintendent and the district employs the administrators, but what we had found was it does need to read the board employs. But I thought I had another one there around the
I was just looking through that
anti-racist
too.
lens or leading with an equity. There was another equity type focused edit we had made.
I was thinking it was
Grab
just
my
the one.
paper.
There's a list in Board Doc, like, of which ones were edited.
Yeah, I just thought it was the one, but I don't know.
I was thinking it was just the one, Matt.
Maybe it was just
Yeah,
that.
I think it was
I
just
didn't
one.
see it any other place.
Maybe I was just thinking about that other part you just pointed out to us around we talked about that. And then we had talked about some of the parts of the superintendent evaluation, but we decided to keep that consistent with the normal process and get us on cycle like other districts would be with the typical format there. So no edits proposed on that one from our conversation last time.
Everybody good with moving on and tackling the 400s?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping this doesn't take 12 meetings like it did the last time. Pretty good undertaking. And like the last few series, I kind of went through and had a few very small notes, I think, and let anybody else jump in with their notes. Very.
That's a minor.
You want to go first?
Well, yeah, sure. 491, change immunodepressed to immunocompromised.
What number was that?
This is the page number.
Oh,
Sorry. 91. Yeah.
I mean, Kim.
It's 403.3.
403.3.
Third paragraph, health goes to immunodepressed. It should say organized.
Yep.
And then page 97, where it says, written, I think it's written, consent from nurse or physician, you should add in advanced practice provider as well, which is an umbrella for nurse practitioners and PAs.
Advanced practice
Yeah, or APP for,
Providers.
practitioner.
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
advanced practice provider. So I have had an opportunity to ask questions of a qualified nurse, physician, or advanced practice provider. And then on page 211, or is spelled O-R-E instead of O-R.
We like our goal forward.
Yeah.
Where's that at on that page? Oh, it's in the job reclassification paragraph, sort of right in the middle of the page.
Okay.
Yep.
Found it, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
No sketching.
Okay, if you really want to get picky, on page 201, you have 2 periods instead of 1. And that's all I got.
Can't believe you can.
I know. Well, I copy and paste from Iowa Association of School Board.
See that one? It's right after retire.
Okay. That's page 201.
Yep.
Okay.
I have one very similar note, and that's on page 25. At the very top of the page, before and after of travel is the exact same sentence. I assume the
Yeah.
first part should go away, it should be after the travel part.
Just trying to be thorough, Sean.
It's really important.
Yeah.
Do we want to stress it? We can put it all in bold. And then I have a couple, like, I guess, real questions on page, let's see, what is it, 139. I think this is the employee evaluation part. It talks about, they'll be required to demonstrate this, demonstrate that, demonstrate that thing. And I'm wondering, I'm trying to make sure I'm not mixing stuff. Does there need to be the culturally responsive equity type stuff in there? Are we evaluating folks on that now?
Well, so this is a bigger conversation we need to get into with you guys that we've been talking to Brady a little bit around, because we've been promising that standard around kind of culture responsive teaching and learning or diversity, equity, inclusion. We, last year with the admin, they increased to the 10 standards, and so that was accounted for with equity. And then Chase and Brady have been working around, okay, well, what do we do for the teacher standards, right? And we're working through some code pieces that may not allow us to add a standard of our own, that it can only be evaluated on the Iowa teaching standards. And so really what then could do as a solution that we haven't brought to the whole board is create like a subset off of one of the existing standards and criteria about kind of the look for in that, because it's one of 42 criteria, but how well does it get evaluated? How much conversation are we having with staff around there? So I don't mean to, overshare for what these guys might have wanted to share to you, but I think that's part of what we're wondering what we might have to take. And so we hit a little bit of a roadblock when we started digging into that it may not be possible in code for us to add a standard we evaluate our teachers onto. So anything you guys would want to add there? That's what I'm recalling from Friday.
That's right, but as I look at this policy and the way it's written, those, and the teacher's gonna look at them and we can look at them and say, okay, they just kind of paraphrase the Iowa teaching standards. They don't technically call them the Iowa teaching standards, and so like if the board
In
wanted
this
to-
policy, you're talking about just how they
Right.
word it here?
Yeah, and so if the board wanted to say, this is a concept that we think they need to be proficient in.
So
The
we could
board
draw
could-
out that criteria from that standard and put it in this policy.
Yeah, you could put
Yeah.
that, whatever, Sean, or however you want to phrase that, we can put that in there. And then it'd just be our job to try to link it back to, okay, it's not one of the teaching standards, so how do we embed this ideal that we captured in policy into one of the standards or the criteria?
Yeah, because those are the headers for
They
the
are,
eight standards,
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
so,
They just don't call them out as standards 1 through D.
But one of the criteria under those standards is gonna address equity pretty directly. Isn't there at least 2 or 3 of those 42 criteria that speak
Yeah.
to it pretty directly that
yeah.
we could even maybe create a subset in there? Just put that criterion under the bullet, right?
Could certainly do it in planning and preparation or the delivery of instruction.
So are we losing you guys with what we're saying?
No, I did,
No.
I'm trying to figure out, I guess in my head, I get what you're saying, what we can and can't do. If we are going to be evaluating them on some criteria under some standard, however you want to word it, I feel that it's a big thing for our board, that maybe it needs to be codified
Yep.
in our policy
Right.
somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't particularly care exactly how it's like I don't want to break the rules here and start creating code that we can't, but it's our policy. I would like to see something, and whatever works best to,
So maybe we pull out the relevant criterion of those 42, whether it's 2 or 3, or maybe 1 sounds better, but we could then house it under the appropriate bullet point there, and then that would be pretty explicitly stated that those things are especially valuable to us as a school district, right, in that area. And then we could bring that back for you guys to look at and pull those out.
because you could have a line that say, this criteria for each point, or
Yeah.
Yeah, including.
strong emphasis from our
Yeah.
school, or includes these, or something.
The other thing I think that we'll see how it shakes out, but the 4 of us have been involved in the evolving portrait of an educator process.
Mhm.
There's going to be some pretty strong
Yeah, that's a good idea,
equity
too.
and cultural responsiveness teaching in there. So do we come back and link that to the policy too in some way? Since it's going to be, even based on the certificate of things.
Yeah,
It's going to be the forefront of
Yeah.
what that looks
Yeah,
like.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's several. This is the positive part of the Iowa teaching standards, and the other side of the coin, that's negative, is that they are pretty broad. So there's a lot of places where they fit, you could standard 8, also would fit in there. But yeah, so there's ways. I mean, it's the same thing you did with the administrative standards and the code of ethics. Is basically, because that's language that probably was taken right from the BOE, and you just add the anti-racist lens.
Right.
So it's just the same
Exactly.
basic concept, yeah. I think so I don't think you're oversharing. I think some of the work that we have to do is, not that we haven't already done it, but it's how you operationalize these standards and the criteria.
Right.
So when it says aligns classroom assessment with instruction, well, what are the look-fors you would have to evaluate as you went in to determine whether or not that was happening on a regular basis? So I think that's what we're trying to figure out too.
Yeah, like 8D it's not as good as I thought it was, but it says demonstrates an understanding and respect for all learners and staff, the key word being all, right? That it's not just some of your learners that your classroom works for. So that would be an example of one that, okay, well, that's in the teaching standards and teachers are supposed to be being evaluated on it, but how in depth do we go, right? And what are those conversations looking like? That would be part of our work to do our equity action step, but like Brady said, they're broad, which is good, but they're also broad, which is difficult. So we can bring some ideas back on that about how to better code that in there.
So, how much latitude do you have, this is an honest question because I have no idea, when you're evaluating against these 8 standards, can they be weighted? These 3 standards we find to be more important in our district? How does that,
Not
or
really.
is it
No.
sort of a?
Well,
It feels to me like it's sort of a check the box thing, which drives me insane on an evaluation.
I think it's different too. It's probably different for your probationary periods versus your
Yeah.
your standard license. But probationary, you probably, I don't think you'd want to do that. I think probationary teachers, you evaluate across state standards. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like what or if you looked at that superintendent evaluation about how it's going to come back to that kind of baseline, this is what mirrors what Brady's talking about. Baseline is when you're new, meet them all, right? Can you do all of them and be successful, right? And you can be proficient in all. Then when you get into like continuous improvement development, you're going to focus in, like we'll focus in on 2 or 3, right, in my evaluation. Well, that's the same thing that would happen with a veteran teacher. Then you're probably not going to go detailed into all 8 of these standards. You're going to identify through their career development plan what are the ones that we really need to focus on and what are we going to have our professional growth conversations around. So are they weighted differently? No,
so it's
because you
not
still
weighted,
need to
but
meet them
tailored
all.
for improvement.
Right,
Yeah,
and your
but-
career development plans are connected now more frequently, and in fact, probably all across the board now to the district and schools comprehensive school improvement plan. So that's
Yeah.
where your strategic goals of your district around equity then translate down into, school level decisions and policies and professional development, and then also what teachers are saying, okay, here's how this works then for my particular teaching assignment, here's the things that I'm gonna do to make that happen, how I'm gonna improve in that. And so they do connect, it just isn't, it just takes a couple of steps to get there.
I would add that we've seen a nice transition with those Iowa standards for school leaders because formerly our administrative evaluations would have just been simply meeting standard or not, right? Well, if you've seen the new instrument for administrators, it is based on that rubric where you can fall out in different places along the continuum for each of those 10 standards. So, yeah, maybe the teaching standards will evolve that way as
Yeah,
well.
and we did add that. I mean, we added to because we're now doing it in an online mechanism, we did add a category effectively, saying that, like, there used to be needs or doesn't, and now there's a needs improvement. And so it's just shifting people's minds that it's a growth, tool, and that, teachers who have never had something listed as needs improvement, that's a freaky thing. So,
Yeah, in the worst example, it becomes a checkbox for minimum compliance. In the best example, we have people coaching folks through, they're setting goals, they're getting better, they're pushing themselves, they're getting timely feedback, informative feedback, all of those things. So,
I appreciate that. Like, I just want to make sure that we're emphasizing somewhere things that are, important to us that we've been.
yep.
Yeah,
I've been
It's a good question.
I've been thinking about your question a lot. I'm trying to think back through the different examples. And are they weighted differently? No, but they're not all treated equally either. I mean, it's kind of what we're saying, but Brady and I can probably go back to examples where you've had some teachers that have had 2 do not meets or 2 needs improvements. And you're like, we can work with that teacher and improve because of the areas they're in. Where the other teacher has just 1 do not meets, and we're like, well, this is a big problem.
Yeah.
Because of the depth of the lack of
Concern.
learning.
Yeah,
And
standard
so-
8 is sort of
Yeah,
where you're
that's
saying.
right.
Standard 8 is like, all right, there you go. Now we got a problem.
Yeah.
We're at a standard 8 issue.
So you could have teachers kind of struggling in other areas, and then you have another teacher that's okay on the first 7, but fails in standard 8, we're like, okay.
That's a problem.
Let's have a different conversation.
Yeah.
So I don't really think they're weighted equally in the sense of how we look at when people don't
Yeah.
meet the
Right,
expectations. And-
right, yeah. Yeah,
The response and the corrections are
Yeah.
treated differently.
Right.
yeah, that's a good
That
one.
makes sense.
But I think we can do some more growth.
Yeah, if we can
A couple different ones.
see something else there,
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that.
Well, I think, I think waiting and seeing with portrait of an educator, I mean, I think there's gonna be some things that come out of that.
Yeah, we should build that in for sure, I think.
That I think
Yeah.
will fit nicely. I would say too, in the conversation, I hope as a group we don't forget that part of it, the CDPs, and how they do connect to the CSIP at the building level, which connects to the CSIP at the district level. And that's where it's important to know how this translates down
Yeah.
into like the individual teacher or staff member's level. That's how it translates down. I mean, when I first started, we used to have, we probably had like complete latitude about what we wanted to do in our career development plan, and that's tightened up and aligned a lot more across the district. So I think that's good, and I think that's what the strategic goals of the district and the DEI come to effect. So,
Good job, I say good job to her because she's the one that made a lot of that happen as
Yeah,
far as that
that's right.
articulation piece down through
Yeah,
the system,
exactly.
right? That we got CSIPs linked to strategic plan and then building improvement plans all the way down to the teacher. And then obviously Chase's team supporting that, you
Yeah.
know, that's how we're going to handle the evaluations.
But it's
that
something that-
articulation piece is.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of insider baseball on it that, you know, I think we should pause when we're having that conversation because I think it's important to see how that articulation works, you know, so that it isn't, just, it doesn't seem like it's just a checkbox and then you do it at the evaluation side. It's also continual growth through
Right.
these tools that we have.
All arrows align.
That's right.
I've never seen a CSIP. Is it possible to give me an example?
You bet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Kind of went off on a little tangent there, but I think that was a good conversation
Yeah.
on that section. I only have one other question. It's actually for multiple pages, but the 213 to 218, it's all the salary scales for all the different groups. I just want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date
Updated.
scales in there.
Oh, Chase just agreed to improve those by 10% across the board for the team, so we will need to update those.
That does sound like.
We're going to veto that.
What we're
so-
doing, actually, we're gonna follow the board of supervisors and go 18%, so.
That is,
What could go wrong?
Washington
Oh my
County,
gosh.
20%.
that was the only one that I had, the scales.
Was that page 213?
It's 213 through 218. It's
Yeah.
all the different groups. And
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that they were all updated now.
Teachers.
By the time we go back to reevaluate.
And do we have all the groups?
Well,
in
I
there?
know that they're updated because last year was the first year we did 14-step scales for the
Right.
support staff, so I
Okay.
know those are all current.
Oh, yeah, and you got the
Right.
administrator
Yeah.
one, right, too?
Wanting to make sure that we do it each year.
Yep.
Yeah, and the admin one is up to date too.
Teacher, at least step 1B, I don't know the entire scale, but that's base. That's right, it's 4207.
So I, just
And then
time-wise, I guess I'd ask, maybe procedurally, if we're adopting the 400, you know, we'll do it like next month, right? We'll adopt it with whatever pay scales are in here. And then before the end of the year, and long before we get back to looking at the 400s again, that we will have gone through negotiations for all the groups. And if things change, we will have approved that separately, right? As a
So it's
board.
a good-
So I'm wondering, can we just update the 400s after that vote happens?
Well, that's what happened with these.
I assume so.
That is what's
Or it
happened
just
with
happened.
these. We
Yeah.
approved this pay scale after we adopted the 400s. And so I would imagine we don't have to bring the entire 400s back to us just so you could slide the previously board approved pay scales in there.
Yeah, you approve the, I'm not even sure they would have to approve the policy again, because you approved the settlements around negotiations. So what we're really doing is just updating with the current reflection of that. So I think you'd be fine to approve it, and then us just insert the correct documents.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can also, I guess, come May or whenever we're doing those approvals, right, we could say we're approving the contract. That's also noted in policy,
Yeah.
whatever.
That's what, I'm not sure we've ever had them published in board policy.
I don't think so either.
So I'll just, so when we bring the negotiated agreements to you all for approval, we'll just add a caveat that it says this shall also be reflected in updates to policy.
Oh, sure, then you can just approve it
Yeah.
and almost approve the policy and make
Yeah,
it switch.
switch.
Yep.
But that's a good catch, because yeah, that's the first year we put it in there.
Great.
That will work for me. All right. And Ruthie, you said that was the only thing?
That was
you
the only
was
thing I
scale?
had, was asking and making sure we had the right pay scales.
All right, this can be a really short meeting, or I can turn it over to Chase and Brady to tell us what they want to look at in here.
Back to the 18%.
Yeah.
Now we go to page 213. No, I didn't have anything.
I don't have anything other.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, that's
actually,
what
I have a thank you. Like, I know it was a long time last year, but thank you for adopting this, and thank you. Like, this makes my life, our life, tremendously easier when we can point people to specific policies and things. And so I know it's a lot of work. So no changes, because
Yeah,
I'm happy with where
I mean,
it
we
is.
spent a lot of time
Yeah,
on these.
we did.
So we spent was it over a
I
year?
think it will end up being.
It was
Yeah, I think
it was
crazy how
almost
much
2,
time we
yeah.
spent on deep dive. I mean, it was fun meetings, but I don't want to do that ever again.
Really do appreciate it.
Wait till we get to the 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
think the 400 is not the longest policy, but I think it's the one we spent the most time on, because it
Yeah.
has the most impact
It does.
to most people.
But, and so, your point about the pay scales is probably well taken, because I think there's some things in here about insurance and other things. So whenever we make adjustments, we'll have to be conscious that we need to make those updates in the policies too, Kim, and just
Yeah.
percentages, the same
Yep.
things change, like, I don't know if the IPERS percentages are in there, but those change, so just have to.
Yeah, and we can always do an
Yeah.
ad hoc of,
Right.
you know, we're just gonna do
Off schedule,
407.5 at a meeting,
Right.
right? That needs approval if it needs it. but I just wanted to be accurate, that was
Absolutely.
my main concern,
Oh,
is that we
yeah.
didn't have old numbers in there.
Yes.
and People would see it and be like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, because they're posted elsewhere as well on the website, you know, in the HR department, so make sure they,
Well, if we all feel pretty good about that, I feel pretty good about it. We can move on to our last thing, which is the OSHA vaccine mandate policies that we sort of temporarily approved and then.
Much
next
to do
day
about
got
nothing,
shut
right?
down and
yeah.
Whatnot, so I asked you a little bit about it, man. I'm
Yeah.
going to share kind of why they're even here at this
Yeah.
point.
You bet. Yeah, I think we just more wanted to put them here so you guys, so we just publicly recognize that they're no longer valid and that we had conversed about them, we had approved them, but with the court's action that these are no longer valid, and so just kind of publicly stating that at some type of a meeting that while they were there, they're no longer going to be, and so we had included a clause at the time that allowed us to kind of rescind those on their approval, so kind of a non-issue for us right now, but just wanted to make that statement.
So is it the whole 4037 just going to be struck, that whole
There's like,
that whole number?
Yep.
Yep.
Any questions on that?
Nope. Easy peasy.
Oh, you're doing great. Last thing is our next P&G meeting. We can bring back the 400s with the little bit of change we talked about. Start to tackle the 5s. And should be at our 4th Tuesday of March, whatever that day is.
Wait, March or February?
February, isn't it?
February.
Oh, Mike, we're just
I'm
gonna
already- it's February, so I'm jumping ahead of mine. My bad.
it's the 22nd, I
Fourth
believe.
Tuesday of February.
Okay,
22nd.
yeah, that's what I thought.
We good?
Yep.
Sound good?
Yep.
Yeah.
5 o'clock,
5 o'clock works for me. Does it work for everybody?
because it'll just be
Board meeting?
before that board meeting.
All right, with that.
Brooks, before you adjourn,
Oh.
sorry, I know.
Knew it.
I know.
You
I
started
wanna-
reading the 400,
I did. Actually, I
Fine,
reread,
jeez.
I was listening to Matt, and so I'm just, there's a lot that's going on. Or maybe Kim.
There's
So
a problem.
when the board passed, because that's not what that's not what that OSHA policy says. It does not say it will be rescinded. I'm just asking, is that what the motion said? Is it would be rescinded?
The
Because-
last paragraph in there says,
No, it says, at any time OSHA is prohibited from entering and enforcing, the requirements under this policy will not be in effect. It does not say the policy will be struck from the.
So you're just saying the policy's still there?
Right, so I just want to be
There's
clear.
Okay.
nothing we can do with it, so if you wanted to actually pull it out, we'd have to take another step.
That's what I was
you're
saying, right, is it,
Yeah.
is it?
So it should still appear in our policies, we just need to make sure it's not, I mean, how does the public know it's not enforced? I
I have to
mean,
read it, because the last line says.
Okay.
So if we want it out of the policies, the board actually does have to rescind.
You could just take that motion at the next, you and I never got to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's why you were wanting.
That's
Mhm.
why I was-
Right.
yeah, that's why I wanted. to-
Yeah.
Then I told Kim, let's just put it on P&G, so.
so then that's a
Okay.
conversation we should have with the full board on whether or not we want to leave it in there or rescind it.
You can
Well,
confirm
right, and
that
if
at
you
the
wanted
top.
to do it, then when we bring the 400s for approval, you could just say, approve them all except that one, and then if it's not approved, it wouldn't be there.
True.
Okay.
You could just state the motion in a way that's, we approve all policies but 403.7.
But no, I'm just saying though, as part of the discussion, when we get ready to approve it, so the public and
Oh,
the rest
sure.
of the board
Yeah.
knows what's happening, that's sort of explain what what OSHA's,
Do we, can you remind on Tuesday's meeting, I know we have the 300s in the, like, discussion and then in action. Do we have the 400s in the discussion? Yeah.
oh, we
And we
do?
do, yeah.
Okay.
So why don't we just bring it
Yeah.
up
Yeah,
and then.
Then
we'll
by the
know
time
what
you
to
take
do
the
for next
action.
one.
yeah. Good point.
I don't have strong feelings one way or the other.
Sounds good.
Well, yeah, it's just,
Yeah, I don't need, but still, that's a good point for us to know.
An unenforceable policy and policies. seems
right.
a little bit. All right. Now I'm gonna move on
I'm good.
to my next item. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?